All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of Wheel Tapping. I'm your host, Chris Whippan, and with me always is my awesome friend, Tony. How are we doing, Tony?
Hey, doing excellent.
So if you're new to the show, welcome. If you're old hat, things look a lot different today because we have three guests today because we're doing this panel live at Camp Capstone, which I can say correctly, unlike a lot of other broadcasters that we've hired to do the actual event. So we're here, we're having fun. Real quick, what is Wheel Tapping? Wheel Tapping is an 18xx podcast where Tony and I usually take one title each month and just kind of deep dive that one title. Sometimes we get an amazing guest. For instance, 1846 with the designer himself. Tom Lehman was just outstanding. Highly recommend if you want to check out the podcast. That's probably where I'd send you because it's good. Don't you think, Tony?
Well, yes, of course. we have a very good time doing it.
We do. So we were excited when we were putting this together. We're like, I think Tony and I have kind of wanted to talk about cube rails in general at some point, and I think it's something else we're going to continue later on. But it's nice to talk about it's nice to talk about two games that are out by Capstone that are covered in the Iron Rail series. So we're gonna kind of start there and see where it takes us. So, Tony, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, and then let's introduce these clowns over here.
Sure. Tony Fryer, and I've been playing railroad games for several years now and loving it. I fell off the deep end on 18xx, but that also includes a generous helping of cube rail games too. So
awesome.
All trains all the time. Almost.
All trains lead to Train Town, right? Isn't that the saying?
That's right.
So let's just quickly go around the horn so everybody can introduce themselves. Let's start with the big cheese himself, Mr. Clay. What brings you here, and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name's Clay Ross, and I run Capstone Games, and I'm here to talk about all the greatness that we have with the Iron Rail series. Really excited about that, and yeah.
Awesome. Welcome aboard. And then we have Tim Coles sitting down here to my left, probably the second member of Capstone I'm familiar with.
That sounds about right. Hey, Tim Cole. I'm the Director of Game Development at Capstone. Just like what they're talking about, you see me around most of the conventions, this one obviously included. Have my hands in the Iron Rail series pretty much from the beginning. So, Clay and I have been hip and hip on this one.
Awesome. Well, welcome aboard. And then kind of a last minute addition, which is why you didn't see him in the title. Travis is, he's busy prepping for school because he's a teacher and he's in Texas. So life is a little crazy for Travis. But
let's
Travis,
not talk about that.
Yeah, let's not. You obviously wanted a break from things. So here you are. What do you do and what is your impact on the Iron Rail series?
So I'm Travis Hill. I edit a lot of rule books. I've edited a large number of Capstone's rule books, along with a number of other companies. And Capstone is one of my favorite companies to work with because Clay sends me coffee at least once a month. I mean, on top of other things. Great title.
This may be true.
This may be true. Occasionally I'll get a package from Capstone and I'm like, oh man, what game did Clay send me? And it's a box of coffee, which is at times even better.
Nice.
But no, I'm a big Cube Rails fan, and so whenever Clay first asked, he was like, hey, I don't know if you're busy or not. Would you like to do Irish Gauge? I flipped my lid and I was just like 100% on board. And then Clay and I, we've talked a whole lot about just Cube Rails since then, nonstop pretty much. So so that's what I do.
And not to be too modest, you also I've been playtesting a lot of Cube Rail designs from you as well.
I've tinkered with some, yes.
Yeah.
I have. Well, so because I am in education, I have the entire summer, And so I decided over the summer I'm going to design just a ridiculous amount of stuff because I'm going to have no time here in about a week. And so I figured, well, why not? And so we'll see.
Awesome. So Tony, as usual, puts together our show notes, and he put together an awesome structure for today. So we're keeping the same structure. Okay, we still are going to have our phases, which is how we normally differentiate what we're doing. So Tony, we're going to enter the initial auction where we're just going to have a chat with these guys. And yeah, do you have some questions for them? Anything in particular you got in mind?
No, none. No, I'm kidding.
All right, then. So what's the next Iron Rail? Let's just get this over with. All right.
I apologize about the dog barking in the background there, guys.
All good.
Hey Clay, what was your motivation on starting Capstone? And then I'd like to roll that into getting into the Iron Rail series. Like, what was your motivation for going that route as well?
Yeah, so Capstone's 5 years old now, and we wanted to do like a heavy style game. That's like where we started with Arkwright and all that, because that's the stuff I really enjoy, the decision depth there. And then, so we've been doing that. And then a couple of years ago, I think it was 2018 at Origins, Edward from Heavy Cardboard introduced me to John Borer. After I went to HeavyCon the year before and played a bunch of different Cube Rail games and just fell in love with that system. I mean, it speaks to me because it's so quick and you can try weird strategies and not you can get hosed in these games easily, but you're not sitting there forever. It's over pretty quick. And that was a big pull for me, and also the rule set. But Edward introduced me to John Borer, and we just hit it off real well. And we started with Irish Gauge, and John and I and Tim's pretty much gone every single time we've gone to Pittsburgh to visit John, and just playing games with John and getting to know him better, and understanding where he's come from and what he's up to, and the opportunities that we have to work together. And quite honestly, like the whole Iron Rail series, we wanted to create this like focus of games that have the same feel, and just have this consistency throughout the series. And I think we're really nailing that pretty well, especially with Ian O'Toole. Fortunately able to get him, but that's kind of where it started, and I'm just really enthralled with where we're at in this whole process of it.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Cool.
I know I'm excited to see the Iron Rail series. I was excited to see it come. I'm excited to see it grow because, heretofore these games were, a little difficult to get. It's great that they're getting exposure and distribution, baby.
Yeah, it's cool to see it in retail, like just at a retail store. It's pretty cool. So.
It is. So basically, what do you think is the future? Are you still planning on using Ian like to keep everything together? Are you ever going to switch off little trains to cubes? Or, when you say consistency, are you just going to let it run?
So Tim and I have had, this is such a tough conversation. There's so much that goes into the box is tiny. We know this from the size of it, and the package itself is pretty small with the rules and the actual content, but trying to keep that consistency has been, you've got a ton of different cube rails, and there's a whole discussion for that on like how we pick them and whatever. But I think with your question about with the artwork, yeah, I talked with Ian, and he's going to do his best to keep being a part of this series, just to have that consistent look. And he's provided some excellent insight on what that presentation should look like for the product itself and what he wants to do with it as well. So, it's not just me making decisions. I mean, I'm talking with Tim, Travis as well, a bunch of other people, and also Ian, just so that we're all on the same page and there's no curveball that's being thrown. I want to keep everybody on the same page so we can have this nice, consistent look to it. And that's kind of the plan with it.
So if you were to say like a hallmark of this series will always be X, what do you want that to be at, like, when we're talking next year and it's Iron Rail 5 and 6?
Yeah. So right now, I'm leaning on the one page of rules. It's such a nice sell point, especially for people that are really interested in this series. And in the first two games, especially with Ride the Rails being probably the most accessible game that's going to come out in this series, maybe that changes down the road and gets into some real cattywampus stuff with bigger rule books, but we don't know. I mean, definitely for the first 5 or so, we're looking at the one sheeter for rules.
Two pages of rules.
Yes.
Front and back.
One sheet.
I like one.
2 pages.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're going to be unfolding a map. It's one sheet. It's one sheet.
It's like the bus rule book. The bus rule book is one page of rules.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's kind of like what we're thinking with this right now.
Cool. So Tim, hearing that, you know, when you guys are looking for games to develop and bring into the system, are you having to try and like pare them down, or are you trying to scale them back or streamline them? You know, how's that working from the development side?
No, I got you. And Clay started talking a little bit about it. So we developed just to better understand the landscape of all the Cube Rails games that are out there. We developed a little bit of a classification, categories, and characteristics model, I guess, and then we tossed all of these, all the titles into that because what we wanted to do was have a pretty decent penetration into all the different characteristics while still keeping it in that similar that one sheet, Travis, one sheet of rules. But with that kind of opened up some opportunities with some different titles that maybe we weren't originally on our first list. But with that, it's a matter of putting them in front of people, which has been a little bit actually easier in the last few months as we transitioned to Tabletop Simulator versus focusing really on getting folks around the table. Now, again, you definitely don't get the same experience on Tabletop Simulator, but you do get you do get some plays in a lot quicker. So we've been able to put some through the crank on that and rule some out pretty quick, and then have some that we attach to
Awesome.
pretty tightly. And then after that, then you're exactly right. We have grabbed a couple of them where the first thing was, okay, this would be great. It needs to be about 2/3 of what it currently is. and then it's figuring out,
exactly what you're talking about right now.
Right. Is everyone going to stack hands on that and, be comfortable with some of those changes? So yeah, I mean, I think we saw a little bit of this with Ride the Rails. The intent is to take the titles as they currently have been published in the past, and then look for any opportunities to tune them up a little bit. I mean, we have the opportunity of these titles have already been in hands of a few hundred people, so we'd be kind of silly not to take some of that feedback and crank it back into the game itself.
Awesome. So Travis, that leads me to you, which is, I can't imagine trying to, I can envision Ian's job of trying to have a similar, theme to painting the games and the covers and the particular look he's going for. How do you manage to try and accomplish the same thing? I mean, in 18xx, we have rules, we have numbers, we have sections, right? Like it's very GMT style, right? We're very boom, boom, boom. Yep. But when it comes to, the Iron Rails, it's kind of a meld between the two. How are you trying to keep, that part of it consistent?
What's interesting is that Clay and I were talking about this, I guess, just like last week, because I was working on the third Iron Rails game, and I was just like, all right, I think it's time to finally sit down and start working on, the 2 pages in a Google Doc that this is, and really it's 2 pages in a Google Doc. Yeah, 1 sheet front and back. Yes, it is 1 sheet front and back, right? But you just. But it's it's just taking the organization and the layout of it, and it's making sure that it kind of flows the same pattern, that it uses the same terminology, that it's organized the same way. Like Winsome games are very much a here is your build, and then like at the end here are all the special parts about the building that you need to watch out for, which once again it's only one page front and back in a Winsome rulebook, but still we want it to be as easy as possible. So something like Ride the Rails, all of those kind of weird bonuses that happen, transcontinental connection bonuses, stuff like that, instead of leaving it at the bottom of the last page in the far right hand column, you're like, that should be under the build section, because
Gotcha.
it makes sense because you're building, and the cost should be right there, and everything should line up in that capacity. And so really what happens is that I was working on the third one, and I took the first two rule books and just kind of looked at them, and I go, okay, so what does this look like here? What does this look like here? How do I make sure that I maintain the same consistency in the style between the first two? And then on top of that, Ian O'Toole is just absolutely marvelous, like in the way that he translates. Like what I love about what Ian does is that he doesn't just do art and graphic design. He comes back a lot of times with, hey, what about this? And oftentimes the hey, what about this is a graphic design thing, but it totally changes the way that the rules are shaped and that they're written. And so because of that, it makes so much more sense, just the way that he's able to make all that stuff happen. And so for me, it's just really maintaining consistency of terms and just stylistic layout, making sure that things just make sense and they're presented in the same order, regardless of whatever box you pick up.
Right. Awesome. Tony, before I push the yellow phase onto you, do you have any questions for the gentleman?
No, I think that was an interesting conversation, Travis. It sounds like Ian does UX as well as UI, right? So it sounds like you guys have a good working relationship.
He very much so does, and I'm very appreciative with that. I mean, it's one of those that you work with some people, some graphic designers and some artists, and just like that's just 100% what they do, which is great, and they're fantastic at it. But being able to have that input in terms of just like input and gameplay and usability from the graphic design perspective is it's marvelous.
Awesome. And I encourage you to check out the Ian O'Toole interview, which if you missed it, it was streamed just before this, but it'll be available on the Capstone site because I got to fulfill a bucket list item by talking to the gentleman. So that was kind of amazing. And he dives deep into, can I eliminate a chip and make it a track? Like that's his mantra. He's like, can we take it out of players' hands and put it on a board so that we don't need extra stuff? Which I love. Awesome. Well, I think it's time to start moving us through the phases. So we're going to move on to the yellow phase. Now, the yellow phase today is a little different because we're going to talk about the first in the Iron Rail series, specifically Irish Gauge, and this gorgeous beauty. So Tony, I've talked enough. You and I actually, this was literally the first game you and I played in person. I do believe we played this with Robin, and it was a treat because I'm like, I want to play this thing before Clay even published it. Like, it was coming. I pre-ordered it, but we played it. Paper shares and all. So I'm gonna let you lead this one.
Well, sure. Thanks, man. Irish Gauge, Yellow Phase, Iron Rail 1, right? I have the Winsome version. I've had the Winsome version for, quite some time, and so I've played it, a fair bit. This production, however, is pretty rockin'. I particularly love this cover. I know this isn't much about the game, but like this cover really talks to me with the rolling hills and everything. It's super amazing. And of course, the train on it. Yay. But yeah, so, I guess to start with, hey, it's one page.
It is, baby. There it is.
And there's people on the chat talking about, simple rules that offer a depth of play, and Irish Gauge is certainly one of those games. It's it's short rules, easy to learn, easy to teach, easy to get it right into playing the game, but you know, not so easy to play right up front, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, the depth is there. I mean, when we demoed this at a couple small conventions when it came out in September, Grand Con and then Buckeye Game Fest locally, and then we hit PAX Unplugged in December last year when the world was awesome and everything was great. um, we had, because PAX Unplugged is PAX, for those that don't know, is more like it's Penny Arcade Expo, and it's video game centric and that kind of thing. So we're pulling in that type of crowd at this show, and so this game I was very excited to see the reactions to demoing Irish Gauge at this show. And so we had it out on the table, and we had the rule book, and people would walk up to him and be enthralled by just looking at the map and the box cover, like you mentioned. I absolutely love it too. But they would just be like, "This looks really cool. Is it hard to play?" And we're like, "No, this is the rule book. Here's the setup, and on the back is just the rules of play." And that instantly was like almost like eliminating a barrier. They just became instantly interested in, well, I can handle that. I can try this. This isn't as complicated as it looks with the table of dividends, hexes, and out there and everything. And so they would sit down, and we would just jump into it and start playing. And I mean, the games aren't going to be for everybody, right? I mean, that's the thing with games. But just to see people try it for the first time, and then the people that played it, we had this frequently. This is like the most frequent comment was, "I never thought I would like a train game, and I'm so glad to be able to try this." And I love it. I really like this, and I want to keep, this is my pace kind of thing, and I want to explore this series some more. And so that's kind of like building upon this Iron Rail series and what we're trying to do with it. So that was like awesome. One of the coolest things. Yeah.
Right on. I would say, Clay, I've had similar experience, right, with my Euro game playing friends and stuff like that, right? Or, let's play a train game. No, no, seriously, let's play this. And they end up liking it, right? Because it is, quick and easy to teach. And it does have some depth of play there, right? And you get all that like in an hour. This is not, a super long, this is not an 18xx length game, right? And you're packing a lot of things in there, like the auctions, right? There's only a few actions you can do in a turn. What is it, 4, right, or something like that? And I love auction games, and that's one of the bigger, meatier parts of this, right? Is putting a share up for sale, and it's going to be worth X. It's got a minimum bid, but how much am I going to make on this share over the rest of the game? How much can I afford to pay over? How much money does everybody else have? The auction aspect is one of my favorite parts of this game.
For sure.
Yeah, that was an intimidating factor, but I think the way that the shares have the minimum bid, and then you also see on the share, okay, this is going to be the minimum bid for the next share. So it gives you these bounds of like value for the shares. Obviously, as you play the game more and more with people, those bounds don't mean as much. But for brand new players, you've got some limits. You got the minimum bid, and then this is what's going to be the bid for the next share, if in the future. So you can kind of gauge what what you want to do.
And players knowing just kind of right off the bat, hey, I'm going to get this money back. So there's kind of that feel of how much do I want to overbid? If this share costs me $13, how much? Just like what you're saying, Tony, how much am I going to get back before? Do I toss $18 in? And it's a poor game. You don't have hardly any money to start off with, anyways, and you're not making a ton of money at all. And so because of that, you have to be really conscious about the amount of money that you're spending up front.
Yeah, this is one of those auctions that you will generally, like, if face value is X and you look around the table and you realize if everybody just adds $1, you will not be able to afford it. So you might as well just bid everything you have, because you need to maybe knock somebody out of the bid. And there are so many times that auction is a 2-person auction and a 5-player game, because there's just nobody has the money to do it right then. So timing on that auction is it's just so super tight and juicy.
It is. I definitely want to commend Clay on his point, right? Because he hit the nail on the head. Auctions, that's a big complaint in auctions and train games. It's like, I don't know how to value this.
Right.
This is giving you some guidelines, right? And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's really at PAX Unplugged, because you do the initial. This is one of the Winsome games where before you start playing the game, you have an initial auction for each of the companies. So everybody comes to the table with the same amount of money, and I would always kind of spin it off like, okay, we're going to come to the table with the same amount of money, but that's kind of boring. So let's spice it up, and we're going to auction off one share of each company. That way we kind of start in asymmetric positions, and we have different investments and everything like that. And so people are like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And so then you start the auction, and it's like the bounds are there on the shares themselves, and it gets them rolling right into it, and then you just get consumed in the game, and they're there, and it's just really this immersive experience where they're playing. And I also think they like the games because you're playing the players. It's about navigating the dynamics with the players and everything like that. It's not a Euro game where you're like, okay, I got my stuff, I'm going to convert this resource into this one. Now I got to get this special resource to use it, and then I got points. That's not what this is. It's about the experience with the players.
Yeah.
Hey Clay, that was excellent body language, by the way. As soon as you started talking about your Euro game idea, your head went straight down. I'm just looking at my stuff. Don't worry about I don't have to worry about anyone else. It's my little.
This is my board. Do not look at it. Don't even touch it. This is my stuff.
Right. Yeah. Don't even think about it.
We could totally social, like, board game cafes with the big X plastic thing, like, for half of the Euro resource management games, like, you could play it like that and not have any problems. It could totally work. Tim, was there any development that you needed to do? Because, Irish Gauge, Tom Russell, designed and made it. Was there any changes in the development process for this one, or was it just kind of send it to Ian and hit print?
Yeah, with Irish Gauge, this one was really it really was just turn it over to Ian and clean up a couple things from a graphic design standpoint. No concerns with rules. Now, one of the things in both Clay and Tony were talking about it there, we did have a little concern because, again, what we're trying to do with the series is open up a genre, or take a genre and open it up to an entirely different group of individuals who just maybe haven't seen this type of game before. Again, kind of, Tony, like what you were talking about, you stay trained and people just they put the hands up and say, no, I don't want anything to do with it, without really getting into it. So we're trying to do that. And one of the things that Irish Gauge brought was the auctions. And that was a little bit of a concern because of the idea of the lack of valuation. And folks generally don't want to jump in and just throw a bunch of money, and they get kind of stuck. They don't want to overspend, but they really don't know what it's worth. So if they want it, they're going to toss some money out, but they don't know how much. So heading down that path of having the value straight on the cert really,
right.
It at least gives guidelines. But yeah, for the most part, this one was let's go ahead with this one, see how it does, and see if we can turn it into a series.
Right on, as Tony likes to say.
Right on.
Right on.
Ride on.
Awesome.
Here we go. One of my favorite aspects of Irish Gauge is the cubes that are in the bag, because there's two actions that deal with them, right? One is what's it called? Placing a special interest cube, right? So you grow the towns up to cities, and they can either be pink, white, or black. And the other one is calling for dividends when you draw 3 cubes out. So there's a little mini game in there of if I put this cube on this town, it's also taking it out of the bag, which means it's less likely to so super fun. And you're allowed to look in the bag, of course. so you can do the math.
Yeah.
You can do
There's
the
always
math,
a
but it
really fun
rarely
balance.
works. Rarely
Yeah.
works.
Well, there's a really fun balance, especially once you get this either happens the first time whenever you play with somebody new, or it's either that or it happens whenever like you have people that have played the game over and over and over again, right? Is that it gets to that point of like, man, you are racking up all of these pink cities, and oh look, there's only one more pink cube in this dividend bag. You know what? I think I'm gonna upgrade. I'm going to upgrade that town into that city because I don't care about getting any points. And I'm sorry, you're not going to get any points for pink anymore. And it's just way fun. Like whenever people get that for the first time, I know it's mean, but it is also really funny that they have those moments of like, oh, why did you do that?
My other favorite moment that happens like that is when somebody pulls dividends and they're hoping for one thing, and of course they don't draw that, but they draw either 2 or 3 of another one, which you think, oh, awesome, I get paid that 3 times. Like, nope, you get it once.
Yeah.
I've seen the triple draw happen one time, and it didn't happen to me, thankfully, but it was rough because that's a lot of cubes for no. Yeah. Very good.
It can be very demoralizing.
Absolutely.
Do that. Like, great.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys have about Irish Gauge? Tom is actually in chat because we're doing this live. We have chat running, and he said, Capstone kept me in the loop every step of the way. The best publisher experience I've had that I'm not married to. So there you go.
Wow. That's special. Thank you.
Good job, you 3.
Absolutely. It kind of sounds to me like we're ready to move on to the green phase, if I'm not mistaken. Green phase. Maybe we should have recolored these a little bit because the box is more autumn colors, so
right.
this
Should've
one's
been
going
the
to be
orange
green.
phase.
It is. It kind of should be. But we're going to keep things consistent. So the green phase, we bring up Iron Rail 2, which is Ride the Rails. So Tony, what we did not get to play this one together. What do you have for this guy?
Well, I have played it, just not with you.
No, exactly.
Well, owing to what Clay opened our conversation with, right? There's some similarities here. 1-page rules, simple rules with depth of play, right?
Yeah.
I would say there's even more rules in this than there are in IG, but not a problem, right? This is still simple rules, depth of play, and again, the short play time, about an hour.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So this one kind of, we bring in the idea of delivering passengers over links. So it kind of harkens a little bit towards, a nod towards Steam, if you will, Age of Steam and that, where you're trying to move, cubes around. But this time they're awesome little people waving down the train. So
Got their ticket. Hey,
yeah,
ticket in hand.
awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a route building, pick up and deliver, aspect into this game. And I felt a similar chord, right, of Age of Steam kind of things, right, where companies are building links and things are moving along those links and points are being scored along those links as well, right, depending on which company runs. And this game also has a shareholding element in it, but a different spin on it than IG does, right? Like at the beginning of each round, players are picking a company to invest in. You're not really spending money in this game, right? You're only accumulating money. They're just points.
Right.
And so you're picking a company to invest in, and of course, you can only build rails for the companies that you've invested in. And this is another aspect where you're playing the other players, right? These are not multiplayer solitaire games. It's like, okay, Chris picked a share of that. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, depending on what's going on the table, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that really spoke to me with this one You mentioned the auctions. Before I get to that one, this might be a stretch, but to me, like, I don't know, the way I think about this game, because a lot of people say the Iron Rail series is like a short take on 18xx. Obviously, that's really hard to do because 18xx has got a lot of stuff involved in that system. But I think this is the distillation of to me at least, the operating round when you're counting your links with your companies, you're doing your train runs, and that's kind of like what this is for me. Is you've got the routes that are built. Now I'm going to find out what's the best route for me, because you have to do that in 18xx a lot. Is what's the best route for this company, and you want to do that for yourself, and so it kind of gets you that same, almost the same feel as an 18xx during that little portion of 18xx. So
Right.
but yeah, that's kind of like the analogous part to 18xx for me. But,
So yeah,
I enjoy
so
when.
Oh, sorry, Tony. So
No,
yeah,
go.
wanting to flex that muscle. One of the things we wanted to do was try to simplify some of the other parts. That's why you see in why we were drawn into the shares being such a much easier process. You are not you don't have to necessarily put a value to them for this. It's just selecting one of the trains. I mean, everything's valued one to a certain degree. You're going to grab one of a certain color, and that's really it. There's no bargaining. There's no auctioning. You aren't going head to head with anyone else. Everyone's going to be able to do that same thing. And then also the track lay is also very a very simple process and simple action. So but yeah, with all that, then you get to the riding the rails and running that passenger around, and yeah, that it has a little bit more I guess technical aspect to it than what we necessarily saw in the IG.
Awesome.
Nice. I like when you can move a passenger and you have a choice of which company to move it over, because there could be multiple routes. It's like, you examine everyone's shareholdings and then go, it'll be purple.
Well, and I mean, really, the best part. Clay was originally talking about this, in that the idea that it's hard for newer players to valuate shares, right? And that's what Tim was saying. But in this capacity, what's beautiful about it is that since you're not purchasing shares, the shares also are the trains that deplete, the available track. And so I was playing in a game. I was playing in a demo game with some people yesterday. Who this person had two shares of red, and red had just been killing it the entire game, and there was one track of red left, and on his turn he was like, haha, and he took it, and I mean, he just swept us because he was able to just get those additional points, because he was like, well, I can no longer lay track. So I guess we're just going to keep on running over here instead. And so it's just really fun being able to see like those where you are having to play against each other and not play against the game. You're just like, oh, come on, are you really taking the last share of that? Is that where you're starting that train? Come on.
So Tim, how much did this one change from the original version to what we have on the table today?
All right, so this one actually we did change up a little thing, and it was a little thing. It added some complexity, but one of the items that came up during the first handful of test plays that we had was that there was this need to, well, we ended up seeing that turn order actually had some influence in the game. So it could potentially matter with the way things were shaken out in the last couple rounds. So it felt like there was something absent because it was just a progressive turn order. So whoever was first last round, it just goes one player to the left. And so it was something you couldn't manipulate. So when there is a mechanism like that actually has an impact on the game, it was something we kind of wanted to figure out how we could open it up and make it something that you could manipulate as players, again, without adding too much complexity, but still, because we want those rules, kind of like what everyone's been talking about, we want those rules to just fall away and you're totally just playing the players. And this is one of those things we want to be able to manipulate the game to be able to get after the entire game state. So we did put in a slightly revised turn order mechanism, somewhat similar to what you see in Power Grid, where what we found in the 3 phases is that in general it's better to go last in the first phase when you're selecting shares, because you can see what other people are taking. You can leave some of the those leaders out to hang out to dry every once in a while. If they take one of the newer companies and no one follows them, that's a quick way to move backward on the score track. But at the same time, I mean, it's situational. There are times when that the person with the most money gets that last good share because everyone left it in the bag and didn't get it out on the table. So again, another thing to manipulate by the players without adding too much complexity.
Awesome. Right on.
That was
also
pretty
a change.
Big.
I was just saying there was also a change in the transcontinental meet.
Yes.
Because in Rail USA, the original Winsome version of this, and I actually don't remember this because I've played Ride the Rails so many times now. But in the original Rail USA, there is a different, and someone's going to like correct me or know what it is in the chat, and I'm just going to default to them. But there is something along the lines of if you had to get the transcontinental meet, to get that $12 bonus, you had to meet in cities, but things had to progress through cities, or you counted up the number of cities or something along those lines. And it was just really wonky in the rules to try and figure out like what it was. It wasn't this simple, hey, we look at where they meet and we go, sweet, there's the bonus right there. But instead it was you had to go back and you had to see the paths of all the previous track lay and the way that they went through and where they connected. And so whenever we were working on the rules, I think it was like Ian and I and Clay, the 3 of us were just sitting there going, really? Is this the easiest way? Like we were just really struggling with trying to figure out how to say this. And then I think it was either Ian or Clay at some point that was like, why don't we just make it that they meet in a city and then that's just what it is? Because in effect, that's really what's happening, and it just took a little bit of rules complexity out of that just to make it easier for people that are trying to actually learn this game for the first time,
Nice.
Or people that have never played a train game and this is their first. We don't want to throw in this cornfield meet, which is what it was called. And I was like, it just the terminology would have been pretty verbose, and you would have to have some mental capacity in the back of your mind while you're playing this game that you're like, okay, I don't want to forget what that means. I don't want to forget like how to calculate what that looks like. And the way we came up with it was it's cut and dry. Meets in a city, you get $12. If it doesn't, $8. End of story. So yeah.
I guess theme can get a little in the way on that one, right? Like they were trying to reproduce the actual golden spike maybe a little too much originally. When maybe didn't need that.
Who knows?
Awesome.
Question for you guys, right? It's pandemic time, obviously, and face-to-face gaming opportunities are very small.
Very much so.
And so, like our Euro group has not met in months, obviously. So I haven't had a chance to play Ride the Rails with any non-train gamers, but I get the vibe that this game would be the same. Like those guys could get into this train game as well, right? Have you guys
Absolutely.
had success with that in this game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know Tim, but yeah, like so. One of my favorite stories was we were playtesting this at ACD Games Day, a distributor of ours up in Wisconsin last May sometime, and we had it out at this bar, at the hotel bar, on this big table, and it's a big giant Winsome game one of the bigger ones, and we just had people like kept continually like walking by and just like peeking at it like, this looks really cool, because like we're building the routes on there and delivering the passengers. There's some like energy in the air as you're getting these points, because the game itself, a little bit different than Irish Gauge, is points are like coming at you all day. Like you're just getting points all day. and they were just like, it just kind of captivated them. Like, wow, that looks fun. Like I want to be a part of this. And so, they would hang around for a little bit, and then like, I'm gonna like watch this one to see where it goes. And so that was kind of like when I knew, like I had a feeling, I was like, okay, this has some serious potential to really do well out there. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that was one. That was one where we were playing with paper maps and just cubes. I mean, there was no production on that on that table whatsoever. And still, people were coming over to see what we were doing. Yeah, you're right.
Awesome. So what made you decide to make an expansion for this one right away? And is there one coming for Irish? I mean, Scottish. Is there going to be a Scotland map, a Wales map? I mean, for Irish Gauge, like what happened here?
Well, I think this system. Yeah, Tim, if you want to go for it, man.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask if you wanted to talk to it, but yeah, that was something that Clay and I talked about very early on. First play we had, on Board's kitchen table. We were 3 rounds in and just looked at each other and just kind of saw where this could go, if we could, if you can get it in front of folks. And the idea or the concept was heading down the path of a system. Right. If you've heard Clay talk on any of the other podcasts that he's been on, a couple of his favorite games are Concordia and Age of Steam. So having that system and then having variations on that theme just coming with the board, not necessarily having more additional production components or anything like that, but just a new board, maybe a couple extra rules that just flip a switch a little bit, or change something up just enough that changes the complexion of the game. That this one was the first title in the Winsome series that we really both leaned into and said, oh, we could just see where this could potentially go. So you see the USA map. I mean, it's pretty vanilla. It's pretty open. You got a couple difficult terrain spots, but that's about it. You're starting at east and you go west, and so now we're looking at with the France and the Germany, similar feel. You'll see some things that maybe you've seen in German Railways or in Paris Connection that show up in those on those maps. I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see stuff like that and some other maps that might come out in the future.
Cool. By the way, Clay, Tom has said that he has expansion ideas for Irish Gauge if you want to talk. So
okay, we're talking.
Please talk. Yes, please talk.
But one thing, Tony, I loved, and Clay was walking me through the map, because I haven't broken out the new France map, but the France map actually shades of 26 with the hub around Paris and only one link in each side. Yeah, just kind of harkened me back to running the West or all those out of there.
And a little tribute to SNCF with that surrounding of Paris like that too. Yeah. So I did hang out in a face-to-face game with 2 friends last weekend, and none of us go anywhere or do anything. So we've all been working from home for years, actually. So we were going to play in 18XX. We played Ride the Rails in right up front, and we had a great time. But we were looking at the Paris map, or the France map. We're like, oh, let's play some France. But we didn't get a chance yet. So that's the one I want to play now.
Awesome. Anything else we want to talk about with Ride the Rails? Because I think we're about to finish the podcast, so I wanted to thank everybody for. No, I'm not gonna troll people that bad. So I've been bad enough already. So let's bring on the gray phase. So the gray phase, is when we're now going to talk about, the future of Capstone and Iron Rail. So Clay, you said early on, and you've used this word. Everybody's used this word a lot. System. Like, you are not trying to just build like I don't envision this line just petering out. Like, I really don't. There's so many Winsome titles to choose from. What do you see? Like, how far, like, how deep does the roadmap that you guys are working on go?
Right now, I mean, yeah, I'm typically a long-term planner and like have a vision for that long term. But right now, it's kind of unique with this one. It's like I'm so focused on like the first 3 or 4. I already know. We already pretty much know what 3 and 4 are going to be. But that took months to figure out, like, what are we gonna, how are we gonna prep this to make it have that foundation that's there and it's recognizable, consistent, everything about it that we've mentioned before, and building that foundation. And then once we get that rolling, now I'm like, okay, let's look at this long term. So, but yeah, long story short, I mean, I would love to see 10 titles at least in this series easily. I think that's totally possible.
Awesome. I mean, but I think that a goal should be, let's fill one Calyx cube at least. I want you to think in those terms. Just fill a cube, and then, like, if you're going to keep going, then fill another cube. I think that needs to be, like...
I think you get about 10. You can get about 10, right?
Okay.
Perfect.
Put them on their sides.
Is that all your Winsomes there on their end there?
Yeah, there's some of them. Yeah, they're right there.
Right, because for those of you who are not familiar, and I don't know who you are, but like Winsomes originally just came in like plastic clamshells with, you even had to supply all your own wooden bits. It was literally paper certificates, maps, and if you got lucky, you got bits, or did you add those? Because
No,
They
get
come with
that's-
bits, money that
That
you
was
got to
prototype
do.
stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. I was going to say, like, I know people who just have trays. Oh, this is for when we play Winsome, and they just break out a tray. So definitely a little
I have a
different.
box of just cubes, just
Sure.
in case. You never know.
I have like the, in case of emergency, break glass cube thing sitting back here. Just little hammer sits right on top of it.
It's poker chip.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of batted it around. So obviously you have some more in the pipeline. You have a lot. 3 and 4 are planned out. 5 beyond. Hopefully, I'm still hoping one of those ends up being a Travis title, because it would be nice to get a completely fresh new title, which I think is awesome. Not that reprints are great, but I think that would breathe some nice life as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking
Clay,
about.
you have no pressure because we're live and because Chris is saying stuff. I just want to make that very clear. I will continue to edit your rule books regardless.
Yeah, but know that he's pretty much has one, like, when you're ready, he's just like, here, give this to Ian, we're ready to go. So without further ado, let's who wants to break it? I come on, like Clay, I think you need to do it, right? So what is the official Iron Rail 3 going to be, sir?
All right, so the official Iron Rail 3 is basically.
Oh, funny.
I'm excited for it.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
That was
that
awesome.
was not me. That was great.
Everyone trying to lip read.
That was good.
But no, okay, for real, we're gonna be rolling into Iberian Gauge from Tom Russell. This is a very, very fun game, and it introduces a lot of new mechanics that we haven't seen in the Iron Rail series. One of those is companies themselves have their own treasury now. So that's going to be something people haven't seen in this series, and that's kind of like what we're looking at is when we pick these games, what's new that hasn't been introduced or a part of this series before. And so typical 18xx games, I mean, or pretty much any playing game, you've got treasury with each company, and then you have your own personal investor cash. So introducing that's going to be pretty cool. Another thing is this one also has you can purchase track from other companies. It's called leased track, where instead of build, it's going to cost you X dollars to build. Now, because somebody else has track in these spaces, you have to pay half cost, but you got to pay it to that company as well. So, yeah. But, I'm excited about this one.
And the hope was to have the box art for y'all, but my man Ian is just so super busy. He just unfortunately could not get it done in time. I think it's like halfway done, and there's no way you could ask him for a half-done project. So I don't even think we know the core color scheme. Like I couldn't even weasel that out of him during the interview. So we'll just have to wait. Look, make sure you subscribe to the Capstone newsletter, because the minute, and I mean literally the minute Clay gets that, the next thing Clay will be doing is going to the email to show off the awesome cover, if not posting it immediately on every single piece of social media. So be sure you do that.
I'm of the mindset where it's like, Ian needs some extra time. Hey man, you take your time.
Yeah.
You make these covers look amazing. So I don't want to get in any interference with that at all. So, but yeah.
And we, to be fair, when Clay and I were kind of discussing the rollout of how things were going to roll out and all, there was kind of like, I might be able to get the artwork done in time. And it was not a lot of time. So let's be honest. But, amazing title. Tony, have you played Iberian Gauge yet? And what are your thoughts? What are you excited to see?
It's been a while now, and I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I don't know. It's definitely a train gamer's cube rail game. So I'm excited about it. It just because it says Gauge doesn't mean it's anything like Irish Gauge, right? It's just it's just Gauge. It's not related to Irish Gauge at all, other than the designer, right? But it's got a lot of neat things, and I think that's one of the things that is exciting about the Iron Rail series, right? Because each game seems to be, like Clay, you just said, right? Like delivering new and different experiences. It's not the same game over with different colors and on different map and stuff like that. There's, I think that, in terms of weight, right? Like Irish Gauge is right here, and Ride the Rails is under that, and Iberian Gauge will be on top of that, right? There's this nice variety that's building in this line. So I, for one, am appreciative.
Yeah,
and my favorite part about Iberian, and just like the way that it works, which I think it's so unique, and especially for this, because we've talked about oftentimes with Cube Rails titles, they don't work with two players because shared incentives and these kind of loose alliances that you have to have with other people. Well, Iberian, Tom's design on this is just brilliant, because if for those of you who haven't played Iberian, whenever you purchase shares, they have a numeral on it, and in that company. So let's say it's Blue. Blue has 5 shares, numbered 1 through 5, and so whenever it's Blue's turn to operate, the player who owns shares 1 through 5, they operate in that order. So player 1. Whoever shareholder 1 performs their 1 action, which is building track. Then player 2 performs their action. Then shareholder 3 performs their action. And you might own shares 1, 2, and 3, but then somebody else owns shares 4 and 5, or it might be totally divided up. And so the process of doing this, like, you could go, all right, I'm going to go from this city to this city. And you're like, I can do this. And there are 4 spaces. There are 4 shares out, and on your turn, you only lay 1 cube, literally 1 cube. And so whenever you do it, you're like, okay, I'm number 1, place the cube. All right, player 2, you better place that cube where it needs to go. And if they do, that's amazing. And if they don't, you're hosed just that early. And so that's what's beautiful about it, is that you have all these like super dense shared incentives, and it's just a fun little operating round of kind of going back and forth between the table and like banter of like, hey, Green, what are you going to do over there? And then Green builds, and like what Clay was saying, because there's leasing, right? So like, let's say Green and Red have connected to one another. Well, then Green operates before Red, so Green wants to, but you own Green and Red, so you're like, I'm gonna lease from Red so that I can give more money to Red, and then whenever it's time to operate with Red, I'm gonna spend that money that I just stole from Green to be able to operate Red. And it's just so cool the way that all of that stuff just like mixes around with each other while you're sitting there at that table.
Yeah,
interesting.
This is also the first title where, and Tony, hopefully this sounds a little familiar to you, but they're alternating stock and operating rounds.
Yeah.
So I mean, now it's laid out there, and there's a a specific schedule to those rounds, and that's how the game end comes. It's not like you keep going until you break a bank or anything like that. But this again, we're adding in kind of like what Clay was talking about, adding in additional tidbits here and there that for the most part are leading to if you put all of these together, probably an entry level 18xx title.
Wow.
Awesome.
Are you altering it from Tom's design, or is it a little too early in the development process to tell?
We've got a couple ideas out right now. We're looking at just a couple roles here and there. I would say it's still early. We're probably going to have an original as is, and then maybe have some variants around that original rule set.
Cool. Right on.
Tim and Clay, do you guys have a projected time frame in mind, or is it too early to call?
That's
I think
all
we're
Clay.
looking at so Travis, I think he's wrapped up the rules pretty much. We're just still working on some small things because with the games, we're trying to keep this $40 price point, and Iberian Gauge is a little bit. It's not as rich in money as Ride the Rails, but it's definitely not as poor as Irish Gauge with how much money you're going to make. So we're calculating around a $1,600 or $1,800 bankroll included in the game box, and we want to make that card stock as well, because when this comes into a retail store, chances are it's not going to be that 18xx player that has a poker chip set and all that. They're going to actually need to use this, and we don't want to make it paper money. It's just makes the entire experience horrible. So Ian loves using cards, and we're going to use that here just like an Irish Gauge. So that's a big component that we're really trying to figure out, and then just wrapping up the graphic design and how we want to convey all there's a couple tracks that we're going to need on the game board.
Yeah.
But I would say pretty much by the end of this year, we'll be rocking and rolling with pre-orders.
Awesome.
So Origins probably is what I would, if I had to throw a dart at it right now, is where I would target this one.
Now, is there, you did kind of mention chips. Are you thinking maybe like pre-order, like maybe go like the brass route and maybe make some special chips just for like these games, or are you not exploring that?
Actually, yes, that is something that I want to do. I want. Tony's like, no, don't do it.
I have enough poker chips, guys. Come on, don't make me buy more.
Well, these will be special. You're going to want these, Tony, and
Well,
because
yes,
they're
exactly.
smaller. They take up less room and they're smaller. They go really well with the series. They're like I forget the diameter size. I'm drawing a blank right now, but they're like 2-gram chips and the little mini ones.
Chips.
Yeah, they're like 20 millimeters roughly, I think.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we would have a small bankroll that would just be a little tiny box, and that way you could just, have your little box and your stack of train games and good to go. So.
There you go.
All I know is that you should see all of the spreadsheets that we have over denominations, and it's ludicrous, and all these spreadsheets and comments, and what are the numbers?
Get ready for denomination and color battles.
Yeah.
Hey, question for you, Tony, real quick.
Yes.
Do you like the denomination of a $2 unit? Oh, come on, man. Okay.
It ranks right up there with the -1. That chip.
One of my friends has a set of chips that has 1s, 2s, 3s, 5s, 10s, 20. I mean, it's just, guys, come on.
Do you
It
like you probably like the 25s then? I'm gonna guess.
No.
Yeah, see, it's just that thing, right? Like the poker player in you wants the 25s. Like that's what we're used to seeing. Like it's white, red, green, black. Like that's it. Like I even have a set of chips that's that, and they're not even denominated, because I'm like, that's so standard, you don't even have to do that. But when you get into train gaming, man, people are passionate about their 20s. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I get it. So I modified the big rack to have some 20s. It's right,
Good job.
right there. I got more chips than I ever need.
Good. Sounds like I'll have more in the future. Clay, if they're a little box, I'll have to buy like 4. I'll just, we'll use them for all the games.
Yeah.
So Travis, you kind of mentioned player count. So what's the what are we targeting for player count and time of play here on this one?
Oh, for Iberian?
Yeah.
Oh man, you can play. I have played games of Iberian with people who we've played it a bunch. That, I mean, it's 30, 45 minutes because you can rock and roll. Tim mentioned this earlier, that there are alternating stock and operation rounds, and so it's a fixed track. It's never going to vary. It's not going to go on forever. It's 8-10 rounds. I don't remember right now, but you're talking 5 players. 3 to 5 players, you're talking probably 45 minutes. I mean, it still fits just right in that perfect sweet spot to where you get this nice, fun, crunchy system to where you're working with everybody trying to make the best thing that you can make on the board, but still do it in this 45-minute time frame.
Awesome. Cool. Tony, anything else on this bad boy?
No, excited.
Definitely. So that's our gray phase. So basically at this point, we're just going to kind of wrap it up with our general feelings about the series. I think it's kind of obvious. Let's start with you, Travis. Like, what do you kind of, what's a takeaway from the series as a whole?
I've been very, so you were talking earlier about, bucket list items. One of my bucket list items forever as a rulebook editor has been, hey, I would love to work on a Winston title, but let's just be real honest. I'm not going to call John Bohr and say, hey man, can I check this out before it goes to publication, despite the fact that, no offense, there are grammatical mistakes in there. But, it's true. But I was like, I'm not going to do that because that's its own thing. And let's just be real honest. That's not what I should do. But once again, I said this earlier about whenever Clay reached out to me about Irish Gauge, I was like, bucket list item check, because this is just one of those things. I've loved Cube Rails games for such a long time now, and being able to see and being able to be a part of this and being able to see this change and grow and like really seriously like change the trajectory of train gaming, because let's be honest, like we're having a nice revelation happening with 18xx titles, but Cube Rails have just kind of, they like, unless you're Queen or Rio Grande, you're really just kind of like maybe putting out some occasionally, and so there wasn't a lot of variety. And so what Clay has been able to do, finding these titles that give you a wide variety but still feel very similar to each other, has just been brilliant. And I'm excited to see it progress and change, and all the conversations that we have about, well, what's next? Is that one good? Is that one going to fit right? All of that. That's been way fun just to be a part of.
Nice. Tim, what about you, sir?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to what Travis just described. This has been a very interesting and fun opportunity to get in and really tweak some designs that are awesome on their own. And again, with that mindset of us really focusing on how do we get these lighter rule sets, but great depths of play into the hands of more people. And with that, I mean, I'm thinking back, it was probably a handful of years ago, being introduced to Paris Connection and Chicago Express in the same night, and just my jaw dropping and going, okay, so there are opportunities and ways that you can take and distill some of the feelings I was getting from 18xx into an hour. And being able to take the again, what we're trying to do is take the entire plethora of the landscape of Winston games and try to poke here and poke there with the intent of we want to hit all the buttons, but at the same time not end up with getting titles that feel completely similar, but have again, we're exploring different mechanisms with each title. Again, kind of wanting to check off a checklist of, okay, when you take all of these and roll them up, then you really are ready to step up to that a base level 18xx title.
Awesome.
So no, it's been great.
Awesome. So that I'm gonna make Clay wait. Tony, what kind of feelings do you have about the Iron Rail, and what are you excited for?
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate what I said before, right? Like the offering 1, 2, and 3 each bring different things within the boxes, right? Different experiences. And so, like, whatever mood you're in, you can pull down one of these games and bang it out and have a great time, right? In a short period of time, right? Like in 1 hour. Hey, you want to play all 3 games? Knock it out, right?
Yeah. Right on. So Clay, let's bring it to you, sir. What's your hope for like if you have a legacy left behind of these games? What do you kind of hope the result is?
Okay, this is, my family always makes fun of me for this. I always, if I try food and I'm a foodie, and if I love it, I'm just annoying. You guys gotta try this. Just try it. Try, like all the time. And so that's my goal with this series is, like, if you have ever seen a train game or an economic style game and it's been intimidating because maybe the stereotypes that you have on this game system are there, this is a great way for you to try it and just see if you like it, because it's a certain style of game that's going to appeal to some people, and it's also not going to appeal to some people. But that chance that it just awakens something within you, like what Tim said when he played Chicago Express, is just waking up and seeing, like, oh, this is an interesting new way of playing a game. I just am fascinated with what's going on here, and it's a great jumping off point into that dynamic and that system. And try it is all I'm saying. So.
Awesome. Well, I'll bring it home, and I'll just say that I just love that, there's been a lot of discussion in the 18xx community about graphic design, accessibility, whether it's gatekeeping with, having difficult design and things like that. And I think that these designs and their popularity and their price point say poo on that, because these are accessible and these are good, and you can have design and still have function. And while this may not be 18xx, with Iberian, we're edging ever closer to that. What's in between Iron Rail and 18xx? Like there's something in the middle there, and there's some heavier, winsome stuff that kind of floats in that area as well. So I'm excited to kind of explore that space in the future and see what happens, because I think it's great. The more people who play train games, the cheaper it gets, the more I can get my hands on them. It's just the rising tide that'll float all the boats, right? Not the trains, because they're heavy, right? That won't work. That won't work. So awesome. I just want to say thank you to everybody for being on. This has been an absolute blast. More discussion than I ever would have thought possible. But you guys were there's so much passion and love here. It's great, and I love that. I love that. So thank you, everybody. And any final words before we depart? Anybody? Trains about. Do not finish that sentence.
Yeah, I know.
Tim, it was good to meet you, and Clay and T Hill, good to see your faces again, guys.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. And Chris and Tony were the hosts of Wheel Tapping. Again, we do the podcast, we do a video cast every month. And occasionally, if we're playing something new, we'll even turn on the streams on a Monday night. So you can, if you're 18XX curious, feel free to hop in there. We like to have some fun and drink some scotch and bourbon and run some trains. And I think we'll have to have these guys on, Tony.
Hey, I would love to play. I want to play more 1882. God, I love that game.
Well, it just so happens, Clay, this Monday.
Yeah.
Hopefully 1882.
Because it's on 18xx.games. Just recently, I think it's pushed out of beta now. So
You haven't joined us on a Monday in quite some time. It's time again.
yes.
Now that we got Iberian done, we're ready to roll. So
There you go. Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. We're gonna send you out of here with some stuff. So have a good night, have a good afternoon, whatever you're having, and we'll see you next time. Coming up next on the stream will be the interview with Oda, designer of Cooper Island and La Granja, which was that man. That's an interesting man, Clay. Interesting man.
He's very good. Yeah.
Very good. So check back for that, and we'll see you next time on Wheel Tapping. Thanks for being a part of Wheel Tapping. This month and each month is brought to you by Game Toppers. Whether it's just a mat or a full-fledged game topper, you can upgrade your gaming experience at GameToppersLLC.com. Tony and I would like to take a quick moment to shout out to everyone who is a Patreon and helps keep this show on track. Haha, see what I did there? If you are interested in becoming a patron of the show, simply go to patreon.com/wheeltapping. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Punchboard Media, where we all
bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair
At punchboardmedia.com.